The air is thin and cold in the hours before dawn. The Valley of Mexico holds its breath beneath a canopy of stars so dense they seem to press down upon the earth itself. In this darkness, something ancient stirs, not with sound, but with presence. Stone monuments rise from the volcanic soil like the bones of a sleeping god, their silhouettes cutting sharp against the indigo sky. This is Teotihuacan. Long before the Spanish arrived, before the Aztec Empire stretched its reach across Mesoamerica, this place stood in magnificent silence. The Aztecs themselves did not build it. They discovered it, abandoned and monumental, draped in vines and mystery. They called it Teotihuacan, the place where gods were born, because no mere mortals, they believed, could have raised such structures from the earth. Picture the first human who stood here, millennia ago, gazing at bare volcanic rock and envisioning pyramids that would rival mountains. What drove them? What did they see in this valley that we cannot? The wind moves through empty plazas now as it did then, carrying no answers. Only the weight of questions that grow heavier with each century. As the sun begins its slow climb over distant peaks, light spills across the avenue of the dead. Shadows retreat from staircases that have not felt the footsteps of their builders in over 1,000 years. The stone glows pale gold, then amber, then white-hot under the ascending sun. For a moment, the city seems alive again, breathing, watching, waiting. But waiting for what? The pyramids do not speak. The plazas offer no inscriptions to guide the curious. Teotihuacan guards its secrets with the patience of stone, revealing only what time and erosion cannot hide. And so we stand at the edge of its mysteries, as the Aztecs once stood, as countless others have stood, asking the same questions that echo unanswered through the corridors of deep time. Who built this place? When did they walk these streets? And why, after constructing one of the greatest cities the ancient world had ever known, did they vanish without leaving their names? Mainstream archaeology tells us that Teotihuacan began to rise around 100 BCE during a period of upheaval in the Valley of Mexico. Early settlements coalesced into something larger, something unprecedented. By 300 CE, the city had exploded into one of the most populous urban centers on Earth, rivaling Rome itself with an estimated population of 125,000 souls or more. The builders created a metropolis laid out with geometric precision, streets aligned to cardinal directions. Massive pyramids anchored a ceremonial core. Multi-family apartment compounds stretched outward in orderly grids, each decorated with vivid murals depicting gods, animals, and symbols whose meanings remain partially obscured by time. Yet for all its grandeur, Teotihuacan offers no dynasties, no king lists, no boastful inscriptions proclaiming the names of rulers or the dates of their triumphs. The city seems to have deliberately erased its own identity, as if names were dangerous things, or perhaps unnecessary for a place built to transcend mortal vanity. This silence is profoundly strange. Contemporary civilizations, the Maya to the south, the Zapotec to the southwest, left written records, carved genealogies, detailed histories. But Teotihuacan left only stone and geometry, murals and ash. It is as though the city refused to participate in the human need to be remembered, choosing instead a kind of immortality that requires no words. Scholars debate whether the absence of writing indicates a theocratic oligarchy that ruled collectively, or perhaps a society so philosophically advanced that individual identity became secondary to the collective whole. Others wonder if we simply have not found the texts yet, if somewhere beneath the rubble lies a library waiting. But the silence persists. And in that silence, Teotihuacan becomes whatever we need it to be: a utopia without kings, a mystery without solution, a city that stands as a monument not to what we know, but to how little we truly understand about the people who walked the earth before us. Stretching more than 2 miles through the heart of Teotihuacan runs a broad ceremonial boulevard, the Aztecs, called mica-lined, the Avenue of the Dead. They named it this because the structures flanking it resembled tombs, though in truth, most were temples and administrative buildings. The name stuck, lending the entire city an air of funerary grandeur, as if Teotihuacan itself were a vast necropolis built to honor gods or ancestors whose names time has swallowed. Walking the avenue today, one feels the pull of its geometry. The road runs 15 degrees east of true north, aligned not to magnetic poles, but to celestial purpose. On certain dates, the setting sun aligns perfectly with the avenue's axis, transforming the entire boulevard into a river of golden light that flows toward the pyramid of the moon at its northern terminus. Was this intentional? Of course it was. But why? Mainstream archaeologists suggest the alignment reflects agricultural cycles, solstices and equinoxes that govern planting and harvest. Practical, understandable, yet alternative theories propose something more esoteric, that the Avenue of the Dead mirrors the plane of the ecliptic or maps the path of Venus across the sky, or even traces the journey of the soul through the Mesoamerican underworld. Some researchers point out the pyramids along the avenue are spaced at intervals that, if scaled down, approximate the orbital distances of the planets from the Sun. Coincidence? Pattern recognition run amok? Or a deliberate encoding of astronomical knowledge into architecture, preserved in stone for those with eyes to see? The debate remains unresolved. But what cannot be debated is the effect of standing on that road, looking north toward the pyramids framed by mountains, and feeling the weight of intention. Every stone was placed, every angle measured, every sightline considered. Teotihuacan was not stumbled upon or haphazardly assembled. It was designed with purpose so grand that even now, stripped of context, it commands reverence. As the climate of thought shifts and new technologies allow deeper exploration, perhaps the avenue will yield its secrets. Or perhaps, like the city itself, it will continue to speak only in riddles, offering just enough truth to keep us searching. Hidden beneath the floors of several buildings in Teotihuacan lies something unexpected: mica. Sheets of it, layered thick and deliberate, imported from deposits nearly 2,000 miles away in what is now Brazil. This is not decorative trim or incidental debris. These are large, carefully placed panels, some covering entire rooms. Mica is a silicate mineral, prized in the modern world for its electrical insulation properties. It does not conduct heat. It does not corrode. It splits into thin, flexible sheets that shimmer with an almost metallic sheen. But in the ancient world, what use would it serve? Archaeologists admit they do not know. Some suggest it was valued for its aesthetic qualities, its glittering surface catching firelight in ritual spaces, creating an otherworldly atmosphere. Others propose it held symbolic meaning, perhaps associated with the underworld or water, given its reflective nature. But these explanations feel incomplete, gestures toward understanding without true comprehension. Alternative thinkers offer more speculative possibilities. Could mica have been used as insulation for something now lost? A technology or process we cannot fathom? Could it have served a purpose related to energy, resonance, or acoustics in ways that ancient builders understood, but modern science has yet to rediscover? The effort required to obtain this material cannot be overstated. Mica had to be identified, quarried, transported across vast distances through jungle and mountain, then carefully installed. This was not idle decoration. This was intention. And yet, we have no explanation. Teotihuacan offers this gift freely, a reminder that the ancients possessed knowledge we have lost or perhaps never had. The city is filled with such moments, small, strange details that disrupt the comfortable narratives we tell ourselves about the past. The mica is just one thread in a tapestry woven for mystery, inviting us to pull and see what unravels. At the heart of Teotihuacan rises the Pyramid of the Sun, a colossal structure of stone and earth that ranks among the largest pyramids ever built by human hands. Its base covers nearly the same area as the Great Pyramid of Giza, though it does not reach the same height. Still, standing at its summit, one feels elevated into a realm between earth and sky, a liminal space where gods and mortals might have once exchanged breath. The pyramid was not always as we see it today. Centuries of weathering stripped away its outer casing, revealing the rougher core beneath. Restoration efforts in the early 20th century added the top layer we see now, though scholars debate whether the original summit held a temple, an altar, or something else entirely. Time has taken those details, leaving only mass and form. But beneath the pyramid lies something older still. In 1971, archaeologists discovered a natural cave extending more than 100 meters beneath the structure's center. This was no accidental feature. The pyramid was deliberately built over this subterranean chamber, integrating the cave into its sacred geometry. The cave ceiling is shaped like a four-petaled flower, each lobe extending outward like the cardinal directions. Mainstream interpretation suggests the cave represented Chicamastok, the place of 7 caves, the mythic womb from which the Mesoamerican peoples believed they emerged at the beginning of time. To build atop this site was to anchor the city in creation itself, to make Teotihuacan the axis mundi, the center of the cosmos. But alternative theories wonder if the cave's significance predates Teotihuacan. Could it have been a pilgrimage site for centuries before the first stone was laid? Could the pyramid have been built not to sanctify the cave, but to contain something already sacred or dangerous? Inside the cave, archaeologists found evidence of ritual use, offerings, pottery, traces of fire. But they also found something stranger, channels carved into the rock, leading toward the pyramid's center. Were these drainage features, or conduits for something else? As dusk settles over the pyramid, its western face glows red gold in the failing light. Shadows pool in its terraces like water, and for a moment, it resembles what it was always meant to be. Not a building, but a mountain. A mountain made by hands reaching toward the heavens, with stone instead of stone, ambition instead of accident. At the northern terminus of the Avenue of the Dead, the Pyramid of the Moon rises in perfect symmetry with a natural mountain behind it, Cerro Gordo, the Fat Hill. Stand at the pyramid's base and look north, and the illusion becomes complete. The pyramid is the mountain, or the mountain is the pyramid. Architecture and geology merge into a single gesture of sacred intent. This alignment is not accidental. The builders of Teotihuacan understood the power of mimicry, the way human construction could echo and amplify the natural world. By framing Cerro Gordo with their own pyramid, they created a visual continuity that suggested the city itself was an extension of the Earth's bones, not an imposition upon them. The Pyramid of the Moon is smaller than its solar counterpart, but no less significant. Excavations have revealed that it was built in at least 7 stages, each layer added over centuries, each expansion requiring the demolition and burial of what came before. This practice of renewal, destroying the old to birth the new, mirrors Mesoamerican cosmology, where time itself moved in cycles of creation and destruction. At the pyramid's summit, priests would have conducted rituals visible to the thousands gathered in the plaza below. What rites were performed there, we can only imagine. Sacrifice, certainly. Human and animal remains have been found in dedicatory caches, but also offerings of jade, obsidian, shells from distant oceans. Objects that spoke of trade networks stretching across the continent, of a city connected to the wider world, even as it cultivated an aura of isolation. Within the pyramid's core, archaeologists uncovered burial chambers containing the remains of individuals sacrificed during construction. Some were bound, others decapitated, arranged in postures that suggest ritual rather than warfare. These were not enemies. They were offerings, lives given to sanctify the structure, to bind the physical and spiritual realms. As night falls, The Pyramid of the Moon casts a long shadow across the Avenue of the Dead, a darkness that seems to flow like liquid toward the city's heart. And in that shadow, one senses the weight of what was asked of those who lived here, not just labor, but belief. The willingness to give everything, even life itself, to sustain the cosmic order that the city embodied. South of the Great Pyramids, within the Ciudadela, the citadel, stands the Temple of the Feathered Serpent, a structure unlike any other in Teotihuacan. Its facades are dense with carved imagery, enormous serpent heads jutting from the stonework, their fanged mouths gaping, their eyes wide and unblinking. Interspersed among the serpents are symbols of water, rain and fertility, undulating bodies, feathered crests, headdresses that suggest divinity or power. This is Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent, one of Mesoamerica's oldest and most enduring deities. God of wind and wisdom, patron of priests and kings, bringer of knowledge and civilization. But here, in Teotihuacan, the feathered serpent is rendered with a ferocity that borders on menace. These are not gentle images. They are declarations of power, reminders that the divine is not always benevolent. When archaeologists began excavating the temple in the 1980s, they made a chilling discovery. Beneath the structure lay mass graves containing the remains of over 200 individuals, men and women, many with their hands bound behind their backs, buried in ritual poses. Isotopic analysis revealed that many were not local to Teotihuacan. They had been brought from distant regions, perhaps as captives or tribute. The manner of their deaths suggests ceremony, not chaos. This was not a battlefield. This was sacrifice on an industrial scale, a conscious act meant to consecrate the temple and bind its power to the blood of the willing or unwilling. What drove such acts? Mainstream scholarship frames these sacrifices within the logic of Mesoamerican religion, where human blood was the ultimate offering, the substance that sustained the gods and ensured the sun would rise. But the scale at Teotihuacan hints at something more, a consolidation of power perhaps, or a response to crisis. Was the city facing drought, invasion, or internal collapse? Did the priests believe that only such an offering could restore balance? Or was it simply the way things were done? As you walk past the reconstructed serpent heads today, their stone eyes seem to follow. The temple does not apologize for what happened here. It does not explain. It simply stands, a monument to the intersection of beauty and brutality, where the sacred and the terrible were one and the same. In 2003, archaeologist Sergio Gomez began excavating a tunnel sealed beneath the Temple of the Feathered Serpent. The entrance had been deliberately blocked with massive stone centuries ago, as if whoever closed it wanted to ensure it would never be reopened. It took years to clear the passage, inching forward through the darkness, unsure of what waited at the tunnel's end. What they found defied expectation. The tunnel extended more than 100 meters beneath the temple, descending into chambers adorned with carved symbols and lined with powdered minerals. But the most astonishing discovery was the presence of liquid mercury, pools of it, gleaming in the archaeologists' flashlights, pooling in the recesses of the stone. Mercury is rare. Obtaining it in liquid form requires mining cinnabar ore and heating it to extract the quicksilver within. It is toxic, difficult to handle, and serves no obvious practical purpose in the ancient world. Yet here it was, in quantities that suggested deliberate accumulation. Why? Mainstream explanations suggest symbolic intent. Mercury, with its reflective, otherworldly appearance, may have represented water, mirrors, or the underworld itself. Mesoamerican cultures associated mirrors with divination and portals to other realms. Perhaps the mercury was meant to create a symbolic river, guiding the dead or reflecting the heavens. But alternative theories propose more enigmatic possibilities. Could mercury have been used in rituals that generated heat or light? Could it have served a purpose related to acoustics or energy, resonating in ways that enhance the tunnel's function as a ceremonial space. Some fringe researchers even speculate that mercury might have been part of a now-lost technology, a substance that ancient builders understood far better than we give them credit for. The tunnel remains one of Teotihuacan's deepest mysteries. As excavations continue, new chambers are revealed, each filled with offerings: jade figurines, obsidian blades, jaguar remains, thousands of objects placed with care in the darkness. The tunnel was not hidden to be forgotten. It was hidden to be preserved, waiting for a future that could perhaps understand what it was meant to hold. And in that darkness, the mercury still gleams, patient and inexplicable, a liquid riddle wrapped in stone. Or have we simply not found the evidence yet, buried deeper beneath the rubble? If Teotihuacan was built to mark the transition between ages, then its purpose was not merely religious or political. What is clear is that life in Teotihuacan was not lived in isolation. The apartment compounds fostered community, shared courtyards where children played, meals were prepared, and rituals observed. This was urban living at a scale and sophistication that rivals anything in the ancient world, and it challenges the notion that sophistication requires monarchies or rigid hierarchies. Teotihuacan's people lived well by the standards of their time. They had access to clean water, drainage systems, and spaces designed for both privacy and communal gathering. The city was not just monumental, it was livable. And in that livability lies another mystery. How did a city of such size and complexity sustain itself for centuries without collapsing into the chaos that claimed so many other civilizations? What held it together? What vision or belief allowed such diversity to coexist under one urban plan? The murals do not answer. They only watch, their colors faded, but their presence enduring, as if waiting for someone who might finally understand the language they speak. Cities, as a rule, grow slowly. A village becomes a town becomes a city, layers of settlement accumulating over generations like sediment. But Teotihuacan does not follow this rule. Archaeological evidence suggests that the city exploded into existence with startling speed. Around 100 BCE, the valley was sparsely populated, dotted with small farming communities. A century later, Teotihuacan had become one of the largest urban centers in the world. There is no gradual buildup, no transitional phase. It simply appears, fully planned, geometrically ordered, massive. This rapidity baffles historians. Where did the population come from? Why did they converge on this location? What catalyst, ecological, political, religious, drew tens of thousands of people to abandon their homes and settle in a place that demanded such monumental effort? One theory suggests volcanic eruption. The nearby volcano, Popocatépetl, erupted violently around the time Teotihuacan began to rise, displacing populations and rendering large areas uninhabitable. Refugees may have migrated to the valley, coalescing around a site already considered sacred due to the cave beneath what would become the Pyramid of the Sun. Another theory proposes religious innovation. Perhaps a new cult or prophecy emerged, promising salvation or enlightenment to those who gathered at this Axis Mundi. The city would then be a pilgrimage destination that swelled into permanence, a spiritual center that attracted settlers from across Mesoamerica. But neither explanation fully accounts for the scale and speed of Teotihuacan's construction. Building the pyramids alone would have required millions of man-hours, sophisticated logistical coordination, and a labor force numbering in the thousands. How was this organized? Who directed it? And why did people agree to such an undertaking? Alternative thinkers propose more radical possibilities. Could Teotihuacan have been built atop an older site, one already partially constructed, which the newcomers expanded and repurposed? Could the city's founders have possessed knowledge, architectural, astronomical, organizational, that gave them an advantage other cultures lacked? The absence of a clear predecessor city only deepens the enigma. Teotihuacan does not descend from an earlier tradition. It stands alone, fully formed, as if it emerged from the mind of a single visionary rather than the slow accretion of cultural evolution. And in that singularity lies the heart of the mystery. A city that should not exist, yet does. A city that defies the logic of gradual development and instead asserts itself, complete and colossal, upon the landscape. Imagine the Valley of Mexico not as it is today, arid, dust-blown, punctuated by struggling vegetation, but as it might have been 3,000 years ago. Picture a land of marshes and shallow lakes, fed by reliable rains and snowmelt from surrounding mountains. Picture forests thick with oak and pine, meadows where deer grazed, wetlands alive with birds migrating along ancient flyways. This is not fantasy. Paleoclimatic evidence suggests that Mesoamerica experienced wetter, greener conditions in the centuries before and during Teotihuacan's rise. Lake Texcoco, which once filled much of the valley, was deeper and more extensive. The climate was conducive to agriculture, supporting the dense populations that cities like Teotihuacan required. But climate is never stable. Around the time Teotihuacan reached its zenith, evidence suggests a shift, a drying trend that gradually stressed water supplies and agricultural systems. Droughts, perhaps cyclical at first, may have grown more severe. Crops that thrived in wetter decades began to fail. The shallow lakes shrank, their shores retreating, leaving salt flats and dust. Could this environmental shift have contributed to the city's eventual collapse? Some researchers argue that climate stress triggers social upheaval. When resources dwindle, competition intensifies. Elites tighten control. Populations grow restless. The social contract phrase. In such conditions, even the most stable civilizations can fracture, turning inward in violence or outward in desperate migration. But this raises another question. If climate was a factor, why was Teotihuacan built in the first place? Could the city's founders have been responding to earlier environmental changes, gathering in the valley because it represented a refuge from disasters elsewhere? If so, then Teotihuacan was not merely a city. It was an ark, a response to a world in flux, an attempt to concentrate resources, knowledge, and population in one defensible location. The pyramids would then be more than temples. They would be guarantees, stone promises that the cosmos remained ordered, that the rains would return, that the gods had not abandoned their people. And when the rains did not return, when the lakes dried and the fields cracked, what then? Did faith falter? Did the people look at their pyramids and see not monuments of hope, but monuments of failure? The answers lie buried beneath centuries of sediment and silence. But the questions endure. reminding us that every civilization is a negotiation with the environment, a gamble against the fickleness of climate and the patience of the earth. Around 550 CE, Teotihuacan burned. Not the accidental fires that plague cities built of wood and thatch, but deliberate, systematic destruction. Archaeological evidence shows that temples were smashed, elite compounds torched, monuments defaced. The destruction was selective, targeting symbols of power while leaving residential areas largely intact. This was not the work of an invading army sweeping through in conquest. This was internal. This was rebellion. But rebellion against what? The absence of written records leaves us to read the violence through ash and rubble. Some scholars propose that the city's rigid theocratic system became unbearable, that the common people rose up against priests who demanded ever more sacrifices, more labor, more devotion to gods who no longer delivered rain or abundance. The fire would then be an act of liberation, a violent severing of chains both physical and spiritual. Others suggest ecological collapse as the trigger. If prolonged drought had undermined agriculture, food shortages would have followed. Famine breeds desperation. In desperation, social structures dissolve. The elite, unable to fulfill their role as mediators between people and gods, would have lost legitimacy. The temples, symbols of a failed covenant, would have become targets of rage. Still others propose that Teotihuacan fell victim to its own success. As the city grew, it attracted migrants, traders, and rival powers. Internal factions may have competed for control, leading to civil strife that spiraled into catastrophe. The fire would then mark not the end of a unified city, but the final act in a long, slow fracturing. What is certain is that after the fire, Teotihuacan was never the same. The Great Pyramids stood, but the city around them emptied. Populations dwindled, dispersed into the countryside, or migrated to rising powers elsewhere. The Avenue of the Dead fell silent. The apartment compounds, once filled with life and color, crumbled into anonymity. By the time the Aztecs arrived centuries later, Teotihuacan was already ancient, already ruined, already mythologized. They walked among the pyramids as we do now, wondering who had built such monuments and why they had been abandoned. They could not have known that the answer was not conquest or plague, but something more human and more tragic: the collapse of belief, the failure of a vision that had once seemed eternal. When cities fall to invasion, the archaeological record typically bears witness: mass graves, skeletal remains bearing signs of trauma, fortifications hastily erected in final feudal defense. The bones tell the story of violence, of populations caught in the machinery of conquest. But at Teotihuacan, such evidence is conspicuously absent. Despite the city's violent end, there are surprisingly few signs of warfare. No mass burials of soldiers or civilians. No arrow-riddled skeletons in the rubble of burned buildings. No evidence that foreign armies ever breached the city's boundaries. The destruction was internal, but the population seems to have dispersed rather than perished. This absence raises provocative questions. If the collapse was an internal uprising, why did it not devolve into massacre? Did the rebels exercise restraint, targeting institutions rather than people? Or did the elite flee before the worst violence erupted, leaving their temples to be destroyed in symbolic gestures rather than blood-soaked purges? Alternatively, was the collapse more gradual than the fire suggests? Perhaps the fire was not the cause, but the culmination. A final act in a city already emptying, already losing its hold on the populations that sustained it. People may have left voluntarily over decades, seeking opportunities elsewhere as Teotihuacan's influence waned. The fire would then be the work of a small, perhaps desperate group, lashing out at symbols of a power structure that had already hollowed out from within. This interpretation aligns with evidence of continued occupation after the fire, though at greatly reduced levels. Teotihuacan did not die in a day. It faded, its grandeur dimming like a star at dusk until all that remained were ruins and myths. And in those myths, preserved by the Aztecs and others who came after, Teotihuacan became something it perhaps never was in life: a city of gods, a place of giants, a lost golden age before the world turned harsh and small. The absence of mass graves, then, is not just an archaeological curiosity. It is a reminder that endings are rarely as dramatic as we imagine. Civilizations do not always fall to swords or flames. Sometimes they simply drift apart, their people making quiet, individual decisions to seek futures elsewhere, leaving behind only stones and questions. Centuries passed. The Valley of Mexico changed hands. Powers rose and fell. Languages shifted and blurred. Teotihuacan slept beneath vines and soil, its pyramids blunted by erosion, its murals fading into pastel ghosts of themselves. Then the Aztecs arrived. Rising from their island capital of Tenochtitlan in the 14th century, the Aztecs expanded rapidly, conquering or absorbing neighboring peoples, building an empire that stretched from coast to coast. But even as they grew powerful, they encountered something they could not conquer: the ruins of Teotihuacan. The Aztecs did not know who built it. They knew only that it was ancient, far older than their own empire. The structures were so massive, so precisely aligned, that the Aztecs concluded no ordinary humans could have accomplished such feats. They believed giants had walked here, or gods themselves, raising pyramids as easily as mortals raise adobe walls. They named it Teotihuacan, the place where gods were born, and wove it into their cosmology. According to Aztec myth, after the destruction of the previous world age, the gods gathered at Teotihuacan to create the fifth sun, the current era. 2 gods sacrificed themselves, leaping into a great fire, and from their ashes, the sun and moon were born. This myth reflects the Aztecs' awe. Teotihuacan was not simply an old city. It was a site of cosmic significance, where the fundamental structures of reality had been forged. To visit it was to walk on sacred ground, to commune with forces far beyond mortal comprehension. The Aztecs made pilgrimages to the ruins. They left offerings at the base of the pyramids, conducted rituals in the shadow of structures whose builders they could not name. They excavated artifacts, reusing them in their own ceremonies, embedding fragments of Teotihuacan into the fabric of their culture. But they also sensed danger. Some Aztec rulers forbade their people from dwelling too long among the ruins, as if the ghosts of the past might corrupt the present, or as if the knowledge encoded in those stones was too powerful, too strange for mortals to safely possess. And so Teotihuacan remained liminal, revered but avoided, sacred but dangerous, a monument to a past that refused to stay buried. When the Spanish arrived and brought their own cataclysm, the Aztec stories of Teotihuacan were recorded in codices and chronicles, fragmented and filtered through European lenses. But the awe remained. And even today, when visitors walk the Avenue of the Dead, they feel echoes of what the Aztecs felt: the presence of something vast, something that transcends time, something that watches from the stones. In the beginning, there was darkness. The fourth sun had died, consumed by floods that drowned the world. The gods, desperate to restore light, gathered at Teotihuacan. They kindled a great fire in a sacred hearth and debated which among them should sacrifice themselves to become the new sun. 2 volunteered: Tecuichitecatl, the proud and arrogant, and Nanahuatzin, the humble and diseased. The gods built a pyre, and Tecuichitecatl approached first. But when the heat became unbearable, he faltered, retreating 4 times in fear. Then Nanahuatzin, without hesitation, cast himself into the flames. He was consumed instantly, his body burning to ash. And from that ash, the sun was born, rising into the eastern sky. Shamed, Tecuichitecatl finally leapt into the fire, and the moon emerged, paler and lesser, forever chasing the sun across the heavens. But the sun did not move. It hung motionless in the sky, demanding more. The other gods realized that sacrifice alone was not enough. They too must give their blood. One by one, they offered themselves, and their deaths set the cosmos in motion, the sun beginning its eternal journey, pulling day and night in its wake. This is the Aztec myth of the fifth sun, and it locates the birth of the current world age at Teotihuacan. Could this story preserve a memory of something real? Not literally, of course. The myth speaks in the language of metaphor and archetype, not history. But myths often encode real events, cataclysms, migrations, transitions, transformed into narrative that survives when factual records perish. Some researchers speculate that the myth reflects a period of profound darkness, perhaps a volcanic winter caused by massive eruptions that obscured the sun for years. Such events are recorded in ice cores and tree rings, global disruptions that would have seemed apocalyptic to those who endured them. If Teotihuacan rose in the aftermath of such a catastrophe, its emergence might have been seen as the world's rebirth, the rekindling of light after darkness. Others wonder if the myth encodes astronomical knowledge. The death of one sun and the birth of another could represent a precessional shift, a change in which stars dominate the heavens, a transition that takes thousands of years, but would have been tracked by cultures obsessed with celestial cycles. Or perhaps the myth is simply what it appears to be, a story about sacrifice, about the price of existence, about the debt mortals owe to forces beyond their control. Teotihuacan would then be not just a city, but a stage on which the deepest questions of meaning and mortality were enacted, again and again, in rituals that tied human blood to cosmic necessity. As the sun sets over the pyramids, their shadows lengthen, merging with the earth. And for a moment, it is easy to imagine priests standing atop those structures, watching the sun's descent, calculating its return, reassuring the people that yes, the sun will rise again, yes, the world will continue, yes, the sacrifices matter. But did they? And do they still? The pyramids do not answer. They only stand, silent sentinels marking a boundary between myth and history that perhaps never existed at all. What if Teotihuacan was not the first? What if, beneath the city we see today, lies another city, older, stranger, built by a people whose names time has obliterated completely? This is the territory of deep speculation, the realm where evidence thins and imagination fills the gaps. But it is not entirely baseless. Excavations have revealed that the Pyramid of the Sun was built over natural caves, and that those caves show signs of ritual use predating the pyramid by centuries. Similarly, some structures at Teotihuacan incorporate stones that appear weathered beyond what the city. Stone age would suggest, as if they were quarried, used, and later reincorporated from some earlier phase. Could Teotihuacan have been built atop the ruins of a predecessor culture? But the questions remain. Why does Teotihuacan feel so complete? Why does it seem to arrive without precedent? And why, despite decades of excavation, do we still lack definitive answers about who built it and why? Perhaps the answer lies not in finding more artifacts, but in accepting that some knowledge has been lost irretrievably, and that the past is deeper, stranger, and more layered than any single narrative can capture. In Mesoamerican cosmology, the universe is layered. Above lies the heavens, a realm of 13 ascending levels where gods dwell and celestial cycles unfold. Below stretches the underworld, mica-lined, a dark and treacherous domain of 9 descending levels through which the dead must journey before reaching final rest. The cave beneath the Pyramid of the Sun may represent a portal to this underworld. Mesoamerican peoples believed caves were thresholds, places where the boundaries between worlds grew thin. To descend into a cave was to approach the divine, to risk encountering forces both creative and destructive. Caves were wombs and tombs, sites of birth and death, origin and ending. The 4-petaled structure of the cave beneath the pyramid mirrors the 4 cardinal directions, the 4 pillars that hold up the sky in Aztec cosmology. As archaeologists explored the sealed tunnels beneath the Temple of the Feathered Serpent, they encountered more than mercury and offerings. The walls of the tunnels, in certain sections, were coated with a fine powder, minerals ground to dust and applied with care. Analysis revealed pyrite, hematite, and magnetite. These are iron-rich minerals, some with reflective properties, others with magnetic characteristics. When light strikes pyrite, it glimmers gold. Hematite shimmers red. Magnetite, in certain configurations, can create localized magnetic fields. Why coat tunnel walls with such substances? One theory suggests aesthetic intent. The tunnels, lit by torches, would have glowed with unearthly light, walls sparkling gold and red, creating an environment unlike anything in the surface world. Priests descending into these spaces would have felt transported, removed from the mundane, enveloped in a realm designed to evoke the divine or the otherworldly. But another possibility emerges when we consider the combination of materials. Pyrite and magnetite together could, under certain conditions, generate weak electrical fields or emit faint light through triboluminescence, the phenomenon where mechanical stress on crystals produces photons. Could the ancient builders have been aware of these properties, exploiting them to create tunnels that seemed to glow from within, as if alive? Some researchers proposed that the tunnels were designed to simulate the night sky. The mercury pools would reflect torchlight like water, while the mineral-coated walls sparkled like stars. The dead or the initiated, passing through these spaces, would experience a journey through the cosmos, walking beneath a subterranean heaven. Others take a more speculative stance, suggesting that the minerals were chosen for properties beyond aesthetics, that they might have served functions related to energy, resonance, or ritual efficacy that we do not yet understand. The tunnels could have been chambers of transformation, places where the properties of matter and consciousness intersected in ways that modern science has only begun to explore. What is undeniable is the effort involved. These were not casual decorations. The minerals were sourced, ground, and applied with precision. Someone believed they mattered. Someone invested resources and labor to ensure that these tunnels would be more than passages. They would be experiences, thresholds between states, designed to alter perception and invoke the sacred. And so the tunnels remain, dark and glittering, patient and inexplicable, holding their secrets close while the surface world above turns with the indifferent centuries. Why was Teotihuacan built? This question, seemingly simple, resists easy answers. Was it a religious center, a place of pilgrimage where the faithful gathered to commune with gods? Was it a political capital, the seat of an empire or confederation that controlled trade routes and subject peoples? Was it an economic hub, thriving on the production and distribution of obsidian, ceramics, and other goods? The answer, likely, is all and none. Teotihuacan does not fit neatly into categories that define other ancient cities. It lacks the royal tombs of Egypt, the inscribed stelae of the Maya, the fortifications of besieged cultures. It has temples, yes, but also vast residential districts. It has workshops, but also spaces that seem purely ceremonial. It is too large to be merely a pilgrimage site, yet too devoid of obvious centralized power to be a typical capital. Some scholars argue that Teotihuacan was a corporate state, governed not by kings, but by councils, a collective leadership that distributed power across multiple institutions. This would explain the absence of individual glorification and the presence of standardized architecture. Others suggest it was a theocracy, where religious authority superseded political power, and the city's purpose was to serve the gods rather than any human ruler. The pyramids would then be not monuments to ego, but obligations, structures built to maintain cosmic balance. Still others propose that Teotihuacan was fundamentally cosmopolitan, a crossroads where diverse peoples gathered to trade, worship, and exchange ideas. The city's strength lay not in military might, but in soft power, prestige, religious authority, and economic interconnection. Perhaps the truth is that Teotihuacan's purpose evolved over its centuries of occupation. What began as a pilgrimage site expanded into a city, which grew into an empire of influence, if not of conquest, which eventually became something else, a symbol, a myth, a memory. And maybe that is the most profound purpose of all, to endure as a question, to resist easy categorization, to force each generation that encounters it to grapple with what a city can be beyond the familiar patterns of power and glory. Teotihuacan was built, ultimately, to make us wonder. And in that wondering, it succeeds beyond anything its builders could have imagined. Proponents of this view suggest that ancient builders possessed knowledge of Earth as subtle energies, ley lines, magnetic anomalies, geological stresses, and deliberately sited their monuments to interact with these forces. Its pyramids are positioned at precise intervals, their masses calculated to resonate with specific frequencies. The tunnels beneath the city, coated with conductive minerals, form a subterranean circuit. To mainstream archaeology, such ideas are pseudoscience, unsupported by evidence and reliant on misunderstandings of physics. And yet, the ideas persist. Why? Perhaps because the scale and precision of Teotihuacan demand explanations that feel commensurate with the effort invested. These theories are unprovable with current methods, but they are also, in a sense, unfalsifiable. If the knowledge was lost, if the technologies were organic or dependent on perceptions we no longer cultivate. It simply stands, indifferent to our theories, its stones holding whatever truths they hold, silent and patient beneath the sky. There is a quality to Teotihuacan that transcends function. Stand in the plaza at the foot of the Pyramid of the Moon. The city was not built for a decade or a century. It remains a presence, a question mark carved into the landscape, demanding attention from anyone who encounters it. And what does it communicate? We understood that to build for eternity, one must think beyond the self, beyond the tribe, beyond even the civilization. Some researchers compare Teotihuacan to Egypt's pyramids, to Stonehenge, to Göbekli Tepe, monuments that speak a common language despite vast distances and ages between them. We are bound to the earth, but we reach toward the heavens. As night falls and the stars emerge, the pyramids become silhouettes, darker shapes against the dark sky. And in that darkness, they seem to dissolve, becoming less objects than presences, less buildings than ideas made solid. Eternity is not a length of time. It is the absence of time, the state where past and future collapse into an eternal present. And in Teotihuacan, walking the avenue of the dead beneath the stars, one touches that eternity, however briefly. The sun descends toward the horizon, painting the valley in shades of amber and rust. Shadows pool in the plazas, gather along the staircases, fill the rooms of abandoned compounds. The city breathes, or seems to, an inhalation as the day ends, an exhalation as night prepares to claim the stones. Visitors trickle toward the exits, their voices fading, their footsteps receding. Soon the site will close, the gates will lock, and Teotihuacan will be left to itself, as it has been for more nights than any human can count. But the city is never truly empty. Locals speak of presences felt, but not seen. The weight of eyes watching from empty doorways, the sense that the murals still observe the living, that the gods painted on plaster walls have not entirely departed. Some report strange sounds at dusk, whispers carried on winds that do not blow, drumbeats with no source, chanting from throats centuries stilled. These are stories, perhaps nothing more, but they reflect a deeper truth, that places accumulate meaning, that the actions of the past leave imprints on the present, and that Teotihuacan, built to bridge earth and heaven, retains that quality of threshold of doorway of space where boundaries thin. Do we discover ancient sites, or do they discover us? Perhaps both. We seek them out, driven by curiosity or some unnameable pull. But in finding them, we are changed. They reveal to us the breadth of human ambition, the depth of human mystery. They remind us that history is not a simple progression from darkness to light, ignorance to knowledge, but a vast, complex tapestry where brilliance and barbarism intertwine, where wisdom can be lost as easily as gained. Teotihuacan asks us to reconsider what we think we know. It challenges our assumptions about progress, civilization, and the linear march of time. It stands as evidence that there is no one way to build a city, no single path to greatness, and that the questions we ask of the past reveal as much about us as about those we study. As the last light fades and stars begin their ancient vigil, the pyramids settle into silence. But it is not the silence of death. It is the silence of patience, the quiet of something that has waited 1,000 years and can wait 1,000 more. The gods still walk here, perhaps? Or perhaps it is only us, carrying their memory, their questions, their unfinished dreams into a future they could never have imagined, but somehow built toward, stone by deliberate stone. And in that act of building and that reach toward eternity, they left a gift, the reminder that we too can create things that outlast us, that speak to generations unborn, that endure as questions when all answers have crumbled into dust. If this journey through time and stone has moved you, if these mysteries have sparked your curiosity, consider continuing the exploration. There are other cities, other silences, other monuments waiting to share their secrets with those willing to listen. But for now, the sun has set, the stars have risen, and Teotihuacan sleeps beneath them, dreaming, perhaps, of the day when we finally understand what its builders tried so hard to say.